Hello and welcome to the Event Bestie, the show that unlocks the magic of event planning by taking you behind and before the scenes. I'm your host, Tanya Hales. In today's episode, I'm chatting with Tami Adams, founder of TA Speakers Management Agency, with 13 years of meeting planning experience and 10 plus years working alongside high-level professional speakers. As an expert in speaker coaching, she loves helping the next generation of thought leaders share their ideas and change the world one speech at a time. If you've ever been asked to speak, want to speak, or have asked anyone to speak, this is the episode for you. Let's get to speaking. Tami, how did you get here? That's my way of asking you, like, what's your bio? How did you get to, I'm a speaker manager extraordinaire? What's your journey here?
So the Coles Notes version, otherwise I think that will take up the entire podcast, where do I start? So I wanted to get involved in events a long time ago. I was always a natural connector, bringing people together, thought it would be fun to do this professionally and get paid to do it. And then, because I was always doing it for my friends. And then I ended up taking a course at George Brown where I got involved and found out about the wonderful world of public speaking and that there's actually managers and agents that manage these people. And I was like, what? This is so cool. So then the idea of motivating, inspiring, and engaging people and helping make that come to life was really appealing to me. So then I joined an organization called Speaker Spotlight, and I worked there for about 10 years and had an amazing time just learning about all the incredible thought leaders out there and the impact that they make on stages. And then COVID hit, and I think you know where this story is going. 50% of the industry was wiped out. So I unfortunately lost my job and had to reinvent. It was a time where I think everybody was kind of evaluating who they are, what matters to them, what do they want to be spending their lives on, and precious time away from family and all that, and really evaluating kind of the environment of which they're going to go into next or what they're going to do. And so it was almost like the perfect recipe to start a business. I know it was in the middle of COVID, so it seems kind of crazy, but so many people were starting different things. So I was like, well, might as well. And so I decided to almost like I was in denial at the beginning, for about a year, where I was like, yeah, I'm doing this business thing. I'm not working for someone else, but yeah, sure, I have my own business. Why not? And then really started to see that what I was building at TA was something really different. And now I'm actually saying I'm kind of disrupting the industry a little bit. And it's really exciting, honestly. We're just this year, we're really growing the business. And so just seeing kind of where it's going to go next and who's going to join our family, our team, and the bigger impact that we can have. So that's kind of like a Coles Notes version, I guess, of how I got here.
I love that. So I want to go backwards. So Speaker Spotlight was an agency where speakers are signed, and then so how, for the people who don't know, how does a speaker agency even work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So think of it as a talent agency. I kind of think of it as musicians have agents. It's kind of the same idea. So basically, there's different models, but the traditional model is you have a big roster of hundreds of speakers that you add, and then you have multiple agents and team to kind of put them out there. So clients will come to them as well as they will go to clients and essentially find work and opportunities for engagements that might require an external expert, we call them, right? Because there's the internal speaker, the person within the industry, and then there's the professional external expert. So those people that have really honed their skills on stages and really, in my opinion, are entertainers and engagers with an important educational message. That's kind of how I see it. And so, yeah, they have, sure, you can sell yourself all day long, but it's nice to have an advocate for you. And, clients really come to us for that elevated experience because we're their trusted advisor in a way, right? So it's they know instead of just like sourcing a speaker directly, maybe it's safer to go to somebody who does this full time and is constantly in this world and vetting and assessing and putting speakers out there and getting feedback and all of that than just going direct to somebody. So that's kind of the agency model, I would say. Yeah.
Awesome. That's helpful to know. And you mentioned that with your firm now, you're disrupting the agency. And my next question was just like, what frustrates you about the industry? So I think that there's definitely a circle back and a tie into that next question. What makes your firm a disruptor in the industry? And I assume it's solving a problem that you saw in the industry itself.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So to talk about this because it's only just like a recent realization where I'm like, oh, I guess I'm a little bit of a disruptor. So I think like for me, usually there isn't a boutique agency. So there might be a few management companies out of the US that manage some higher profile American speakers. But essentially, a manager is more of like managing all of the speaking business and like taking a deeper approach. So what we do at TA is we are keeping a roster of a smaller number of speakers. So that's the first disruption. Like, usually there's hundreds. And the reason for that is one frustration that I always saw was it was really hard to get behind all these speakers and to really understand them fully because there's so many. And I'm very relational, whereas I found some agency models are very transactional. So it's like, okay, like you got money, and not all of them are like that. Obviously, the one I was with was amazing. But, like I just found it to be more transactional than I'd like. And so the relational approach, I think, is disruptive because it's really like about not just placing that speaker in front of your audience, but like, why that person, and which everyone does, but it's like, how can we integrate them so that that experience that your people have is transformational? So it goes beyond just what that happens that day. And so that's something we really focus on. So I think that's pretty disrupting because it's really just like, how do we take a big picture look at why you want that speaker for those specific people on that specific message, and is that going to resonate and all of that. So it's a little bit of that. And like I said, keeping that kind of smaller model of like people who work together too. That's the other thing. I always felt all the speakers are kind of siloed, whereas like with our speakers, like we really try to work together because to us, it's like keep it in-house. So if there's a client and they're looking for a speaker and say, maybe they're looking for one, but like it just doesn't match. Like the budget doesn't match, or maybe the topic doesn't even match, right? Because sometimes people think, oh, they talk about this and then they don't. Then it's like, who else can we recommend within the family, of like our speaker roster? And so I'm really like wanting to curate. And so far I have 8, but I want to curate this group of like 20 to 25 kind of kick butt, rock the stage, get standing O's most of the time, kind of group of individuals that are just so service-based, so relational-based, and really want to make an impact in the world. And so it's like disrupting in that way of the model, and also like just the way that we're curating the talent. I think it's different, right? And so it's been interesting because some of the larger agencies are like, so what are you, an agent or a manager? And I'm like, well, I'm kind of both. And, like it's like, oh, okay, but you do this, but like, they're just trying to understand. And so that made me think like, okay, it's different, and honestly, I want to do more, like as we develop and grow and expand, like to me, what we do is all about impact. That's really what our business is about. So like one way that we're doing that is my entire business is run and operated by women, and it's actually a certified women's enterprise now. So which is really cool. So that's cool because it's like you work with us, you help other women in business because they're all working for me part-time as well as running their own businesses. So it's kind of this cool thing. But one thing that I want to do eventually when I can is a portion of every booking to go back to some kind of charity or cause. So like, I was looking at this one that's like, that takes youth into the wilderness and like teaches them life skills and motivates and inspires them. Like, to me, it's like cool because it's like, okay, not only are you booking a speaker, but you're also booking, you're also making an impact. Or like Jamie, my speaker, Jamie McMillan, for example, she is a woman in trade. So like whenever she goes and speaks at a corporation, we offer her to speak at a school on their behalf as well. And that's included, but it's like a way that they can give back. And then like my one thing I've been talking about recently with my domestic violence survivors, like, hey, when somebody books you, like a lot of organizations support women's shelters. Like what if like they could gift a speech to a women's shelter, so like things like that. So it's very like about impact. And I think that's different too. Like, I don't think that, it's really being done that way. So, yeah.
Yeah. From what I know, we've had conversations in the past, of course. No, I can definitely say that that's definitely not the case. And it seems very much like a numbers game. And I get it. Listen, capitalism rules the world and everyone has to make money. And I totally understand that. But there has to come a point where if you are going to be a true disruptor and not in an Uber and Airbnb kind of way where you're taking houses off the market and or flooding the market with folks who are not getting paid what they're supposed to, but really just like, I think we need a different way to think about disruption, right? And disruption means making other people see that you can still be profitable, but still have impact. I think that that's such a super, I think that, when I was trying to summarize myself on a recent post, I'm like, I do a lot of different things. How do I wrap it up succinctly in, 20 words or less? And that's what it is. At the end of the day, it's where brand meets impact. And so I really appreciate that. And, you taking the time to certify as a women-owned business, which is a smart business because, of course, governments are often looking at, supporting organizations who have done that kind of certification. So that's really, really cool. So Act 2 is all about becoming a speaker.
Okay.
So let's start at the very beginning. Someone's just like, I don't do public speaking. What is the process? What should they start with? What should they know and understand? And let's start at the beginning. It's a great place to start, as Maria said.
I think it really depends on what you want to use speaking for. So I think the first question is to ask yourself, what do I want this to be? Like, what is this for? Do I want to speak? Do I run a company and organization and I want to speak to basically sell what my service is of what I do? So speak to sell. Or do I want to do it just because I want to give back and make money? So make impact and money. Or do I want this to be like my full-time gig? So I think that's the first question you ask yourself, because that's going to depend on, how deep you need to go with it, I guess. And I mean, if the answer is, okay, I want to do this in addition to my business and like just do them both kind of equally, then it's really like anything, becoming a thought leader in your space. So sharing a lot of thought leadership and kind of letting people know that you speak and you offer these things. And, these are some of the highlighted topics you can speak about, things like that. If it's more like, I want to be a pro speaker, it's really honing in what is that message? Like what do I want to share with the world? Like, what do I want to tell the world? And I think the biggest mistake I see some speakers make, or people who want to be speakers, is I could talk about anything. And it's like, okay, that's great, but that makes you an expert in nothing. And then people are confused. They're like, okay, so does this person talk about this, or do they talk about this, or are they expert in this, right? And it's just because like somebody will be an expert in it. So you kind of have to pick a lane. But there are ways to still make it varied topic-wise. It's just like you kind of got to pick a theme or essence of the message that you want to share if you want to be a professional. And then you got to really start figuring that out, like, okay, what is that message? What I want to share? So thinking about all the things that you can and your life experiences. One of the practices I bring my coaching clients through is, life experience, lesson learned. How can that help somebody else? So it's like kind of looking at your life and being like, okay, these are the things. This is my credibility piece. This is the stories and the things that have happened in my life. And this is how it could help someone else. And then also kind of assessing the economy, right? Like, because speaking follows the economy. It's what I always say. So whatever's going on in the world is going on in the speaking world. And it's kind of sad too, because sometimes things happen and it's like a big craze and then people don't care anymore. Like the whole George Floyd thing. That's the frustration right now. It's like, yeah.
That could be a whole other podcast episode.
We
will talk about it,
but I will go there a little bit. And it's frustrating because you asked about frustrations. It is because people cared so much about DEI, so much. And now we're seeing in the US, they're like removing team members from the DEI side and like basically pushing back. And it's like, what the heck? Like
you did all that work and listening and learning and hiring and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, as a Black woman, obviously, who was, that wasn't my lane. And I think when you speak about, knowing what your lane is and what your theme and your core messaging is, that wasn't what I started as. And it was folks who came to me who was just like, you speak on DEI. And I'm just like, just because I'm Black doesn't mean I speak on DEI.
Happens all the time, Tami. It happens all the time.
And then I'm like, all right, well, people want to pay me to speak, sure. And it was great. And so 2023 February, because of course they only ever talk to Black people in Black History Month, which makes the month that I'm supposed to rest the most exhausting, even though it's the most lucrative. I think I had 9 speaking engagements of varying levels and degrees. And in 2024, I got 1 inquiry. And that's what society is doing, like you said. And even though, yes, it's louder in the US, whatever happens in the US does eventually happen in Canada, obviously at a smaller scale. And I have Black women friends who are New York Times bestselling authors, and, where speaking is their primary, and have dropped so significantly. And then, you add into the mix, I have some friends who, they're voicing their opinions on what is happening in the Middle East. And if you are voicing your opinion on one particular side, they're seeing the being blacklisted on that particular front. So, you do have to choose, and you do have to pay attention to what's happening in society, because if you want it to be your full-time job, but you want to stand on your own moral ground, you might be sacrificing a paycheck. And are you okay with that? Will you be okay financially if your things go from 10 to 1 or to 0? So I think that it plays into just that very thing in terms of, and I struggled with that. And, you and I have had this conversation about who I am, and I was all over the place and this, that, the other, but I was always someone who I also didn't want to just come up with keynotes that would attract clients. I'm just like, no, I want to speak to the things that I know I can speak to. And if they're not sexy and they're not the things that bureaus care about, then at the time I'm just like, well, I don't care, because trying to craft a whole new message and a whole new theme for myself while I'm working full time and I'm raising a human being, I'm just like, I don't have the capacity for that. And so, now that I'm unemployed, I've been able to sit back and, as I said, examine who I am, what is the common denominator across all the things that I do. And I'm very adamant, you're not going to put me in a box the same way that the industry trying to figure out if you're an agent or a manager, what are you? And you're like, you can't put me in a box. Exactly. And same way, I'm just like, I'm a creative, which means I have a brain that sees things in a different way. I don't just talk to one thing, because people are just not one thing, especially nowadays where everyone's got a side hustle or a side quest or 2 jobs or their dream job. And they're an entrepreneur thinking of going back to full-time. They're a full-time employee having entrepreneurship thing on the side. I think that has to be, the new way to look at things. It's not just people are not one-dimensional.
Oh, totally agree. And I think it's this fine balance, because you don't want to be too niche.
Yes.
That it pigeonholes you, and then you only get booked for that. But then you don't want to be too broad that it's confusing. So it's like this,
Yes.
like, but I think there's unique ways to do it. So I'll give you an example. Like, one of my speakers is the first Canadian to win the hit show Survivor, right? And you're like, okay, TV personality, acting background, PR communications background. What could she talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I really like she curated is this idea of being the underrepresented, because the way she won the show was because she was the underdog and the underrepresented, and the power in that. So it's interesting because she's been able to theme it to the game in a way, right? Where she's like the underrepresented and the power in that, and like using the story of Survivor and how she won and just her whole life in general in elements of that. But then she has another topic, which is different. It's people focused change. So it's like when the rules of the game change, focusing on people, what leads to the win. Now, again, that's not the same as being the underdog. It's very different, but it's related to the game. So it's all about just kind of how you position and market it. We know that, you know that as a creative, like it's all about how you say it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be one topic. You know, it can be very, and what's been interesting is sometimes you got to try it out, my friends, like to know. So like, I'll give you an example. HR groups was not initially a group I saw for her. I just didn't think, I was like, yeah, like I didn't really think like, would that be of interest? But then of course the whole underrepresented thing actually makes sense because they are dealing with various types of people at work, right? So it's like, and immigrants and things like that. So it's been interesting because she did a session for an HR group and she curated and crafted and wrote that message for it, which had elements of her other messages in it, but it was a completely new speech for them. And it was all about that HR people have the magic. Like the spot that they hold to empower people in their careers and life is magical, and that they need to use their influence to help other people. And like also the power of being first, and like what that can do. So even be the first in disrupting the way that you run your HR operations, whatever it is, like, you know, and also setting the tone of what it's like for an immigrant to grow up here and the unique challenges they face. So like that was really eye-opening for them, right? But it wasn't really initially something I saw, but now I'm like, let's get her in front of all the HR groups because they loved it, right? So it's like, sometimes you got to try it out too. And so I guess that's to say, whatever you create will evolve, and that's okay. Right? It's like comedians trying out their craft. Like you have to try something, see if it resonates. You have a lot of strategy behind it in the beginning. It's not just random. And then it's like, oh, if it doesn't, change it to this, or if it doesn't, change it to that. Like one of my speakers is changing the future of work. So his newest talk is like how to lead in an AI technological world, right? Like, because we're going to be, you know, doing things so differently. So how do you lead in that? So it just depends, honestly. But I think like a really good pro speaker, their topics evolve as the economy evolves as well. So very long answer to that question.
Answer, because I'm sure you get this all the time, and now you can just be like, just please listen to the podcast. I give all the, I drop all the gems.
I'm like, just leave to listen to the podcast.
Just listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
I love the analogy of the comedian because it makes so much sense. People think they just get up there and tell jokes. Oh, that would be an excellent person to have onto the podcast. Light bulb.
There you go. Yeah, I think that could work. Yeah.
You know, because there is a lot of strategy, and you do have to test and play, and you have to know your audience, right? What may play well to, you know, a one culture, one gender audience might not play the same to a diverse and multi-gender audience. You know, you have to do a wide range of testing and seeing what works and what doesn't. So I think that's great. That's super helpful.
And can I touch on that? Know your audience. Can we talk about that a little bit? Since we're talking about speaking.
Yes.
I think this is so key. And I'll give an example without mentioning names. But because we don't need to be that bold. But there was a speaker I saw recently, and they were American, and they were speaking in Canada, and they did not know their audience. So they were giving American examples, They were lecturing at us without even telling stories. Like there was a lot of reasons that that speech wasn't very good. It was super confusing. So it's like they did all the things that you shouldn't do. Never confuse your audience. Like if they are confused, then they're not listening to what you're saying. They're just trying to figure out what the heck you were saying before. They're like, wait, what? We don't like to be confused. Know your audience. Like if it's a Canadian audience, give Canadian examples. Like I knew what Chick-fil-A was, but does everybody know what Chick-fil-A is? Maybe not, right? Like we have like one in Toronto. So like, so like it's like, and then build rapport first. He did not build rapport. Like it was like lecture. And funny enough, it was about DEI. So it was like do and be a human and treat people well, but like do it because you have no choice. It's like not like motivated and inspired them to want to do it, right? So it's just like very lectury, and it was just like all over the place. I spent the first 20 minutes, and this is like goes to my rule: never waste anything, never waste a minute in a speech. So at the first 20 minutes, thanking the client on stage in the beginning of the session, it was very confusing. Everyone was very confused, so it was really disappointing. But it's like that is some of the really important things. Know your audience, because like otherwise it's probably just not going to land very well.
He probably got paid a pretty decent amount to do that, because if you're going to bring up a speaker, and we'll talk about that in Act 3, but just like there's an event that's coming up and they have like this really, the celebrity that they're bringing up, and I'm like, has nothing to do with the theme. And I'm just like, you're paying their speaker fee in US dollars, flying them up there, putting them in a hotel. And I'm just like, what is your Canadian audience going to learn from this US celebrity?
Yeah.
So what are the most FAQs that you get when people are just like, oh, you have a speaker agency. I want to do that. Like, hire me. Why can't I be on your roster?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, and it makes sense, right? Like you become a speaker, you're like, I need to be in a roster. Like that makes sense. These are people who book us, right? And yeah, that is true. But for us to be able to sell somebody, we need certain things, and we need that message established, where if it's about getting the message still established and kind of figuring that out, then you need a speaking coach or you need a coach or a consultant, because they can help you do that. But when it comes to like, it's really clear message. We need some kind of video. And I know that's really tricky to get in the beginning, and I get that, but I actually think that there's beauty and value in a speaker who is beginning out to sell themselves, because they learn how to do it and they learn to build confidence in that. And I think that's really important. And also like to get those video, right? Like there's many ways you could do it, but a lot of it's like, heck, if you're just starting out and you want like some opportunities, and you probably want to go out and speak a little bit first and get that practice in, and then find an opportunity to get a video recorded and hire somebody to do that, because that's going to help a lot. Sometimes you can negotiate. So sometimes you can say, hey, like, okay, you're going to pay me this low honorarium, or maybe I'm going to do this, but you're going to give me a really good video footage out of it, right? So there's value there. So it's, getting video topics. I think the most frequently asked questions are more like, yeah, how do you work? What do you charge? When do you take people on? Like things like that. When is a good time to look at a bureau? And I think it's really when it depends. Like I'm a little different, where like I will give people opportunities if I see that they have all the things and that they don't need to be the busiest speaker already. Like, because if I see value in their topic and they're really good on stage, this is really important to me. And they have the assets, we can help build that group of clients, right? Like we can, and I think people like, one thing I get a lot of compliments on is that a lot of my speakers aren't ones that are on every single agency, because there's the regulars that speak at events that are on every agency, and that's fine. But they like that, like these newer people are popping up, where it's like, ooh, like, so Erica's a perfect example. She was very, very good on stage, and she'd been doing speaking. So she has the experience. She also has TV, communications background, acting, kind of has that performance aspect to it, had a good message, knew what she wanted, was very clear, had a little bit of video. And so it was like, yeah, this makes sense. And so people are like excited because they're like, I mean, it's really cool that she was on Survivor, but like
Right.
also the fact that like she's not been everywhere, now that might change, but then we'll deal with that when it does. But
Yes.
I
She
think it's
hasn't
like
saturated the market and
she
been on
hasn't.
every
Yeah,
stage. And yeah, absolutely. So sorry to interrupt. One thing.
no, it's
So
okay.
are people able to and signed to multiple agencies at once?
Totally. Yeah. Like,
Oh,
so, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, this is like a myth, I think a lot of people think. So, the, again, I'm a bit of a disruptor, so I do things a little differently. So, okay. So, the traditional agency model is you're either exclusive or not. So, if you're not, you can be on other agencies
okay.
and you just do the work that they bring you. That's that. If you are exclusive, the traditional way, this is not how I do it, but the traditional way of being exclusive is that you are with one agency. So if a client is interested in you, everything goes through that agency,
Hmm.
and you're typically only listed with one if you're exclusive. So like others can't list you. Where I'm a little different, again, is I'm a collaborator. I love to collaborate. The way I see it is if there's an opportunity, why be a barrier to making it happen? That doesn't make sense to me. Just because that person happens to be with me, and be my exclusive. So all of my speakers are, with the exception of one, are exclusive in a way where all their work does come through me in terms of speaking specifically and
Hmm.
trading. If it's consulting, all that, things just do it on their own. But when it comes to speaking, however, I do allow them to be listed with other agencies, and for those agencies to work with me to work with that speaker. So, because
Nice.
like if they have a client that's of interest, why not? Right.
Yeah.
And, I just work out with them what that looks like. But I, I think that's very appealing because it's like, then you can still be listed with others. And like, at the end of the day, unless I worked really, really hard on something and it came through someone else, I probably wouldn't care. Like, I'm like,
Hmm.
whatever, whoever ends up bringing it forward, like, let's just make it happen. Yeah, I don't know. Like, from a
Makes
money
sense.
perspective, maybe that's dumb, but it's like you said, it's not always about, I want to have a fruitful business and make a
Yeah,
good life.
absolutely.
Don't get me wrong, but impact is probably the most important to me. So,
Mm.
yes, I want to make impact and make money. And
Yeah.
I do believe you can, because another question I get, actually interesting enough, is can I make money and do good? Like I've had clients or potential speakers that are like, okay, but this is really purposeful and like, and like, and it's interesting because I've even had, believe it or not, clients, like not anything recent, where they're like, and this happens a lot with women. This is another frustration. You did ask about frustration,
I
so I
did.
will air them today.
I'm here for all of it.
I love it. So there have been people who reach out and almost expect that the person, because of who they are and what they do, will do the speech for free. And it's really frustrating. And it happens a lot with women. And somebody once
Hmm.
said to me, I think it's because with women, we are almost like so empathetic and so genuine that often that people feel that that's just something we need to give. But
Mm.
it's like, that is so backwards. And
Hmm.
there is nothing wrong with getting paid for doing good. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. And you just like anyone, you deserve to make a living out of your expertise. It's no different than
Yes.
what anybody does in a job, right? Like they have a certain expertise. They don't go and say, okay, I'm going to give you my expertise for free
Hmm.
and work for you for free. No. So why would you expect it of speakers, like that they're going to work for free or they're going to give because you have this dire need?
Right.
Anyways, that's all I'm on.
No,
Sorry.
no. So, as a person who started their career out in nonprofits, I heard this a lot. They're just like, "Oh, that's a job." I was like, "What do you mean that's a job? To fundraise for a nonprofit?" Yes, yes, it is a job because the fundraisers, there's no nonprofit, and then of course, what the nonprofit sector has a problem with is, you know, I'm gonna work for us and we don't pay a lot, but like the impact that you're gonna be making is so important, and the children and the animals and the whatever the cause is, and it's just like, but I still have bills to pay. I can
Yeah.
still work for a nonprofit organization. Hospitals are technically charities and they pay because
Mhm.
the amount of money that they have to bring in is lots. Right. And so of course, yes, a small grassroots organization that has one person that barely has any programs and people, you're not going to be expecting, a 5-figure, 6-figure paycheck. But something like Canadian Cancer Society or, the Ronald McDonald House, those are charities and they got to pay. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it happens a lot to women, of course, for that reason. And just what the society, like you said, what society expects and demands of women to give of their labor. Well, you're just talking to people, right? You're just
getting on and talking to
someone. But you would never say that about Gary Vee. You would never say that about Joe Rogan. Like, even though that I think, and also too, the message is really important too, because like Gary Vee, like he's helping you build their business, and I don't know what Joe Rogan's all about, but you know what I mean? So it's just like, well, those people are purposeful and they're helping me build my business and be successful. I'm just like, but so are the women. Yeah. And just because the approach is different and or the end goal might be different doesn't mean that they're less valuable. Their time is their time. Like if you're a lawyer, if you're a female lawyer or a male lawyer, you bill per hour based off of industry standards and your education. The end, full stop. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But on the stage, there seems to be a consistent dichotomy and such there. We're going to start actively booking speakers. Because I saw this post and I've seen a lot of posts of late, but this one just
you're gonna have to share this with me. Yeah,
I just got pitched to speak at a summit, and the promo requirement stated that if I didn't secure 25 guests, I had to pay a speaker fee of $147. Thanks, but no thanks. Maybe that is why your event is in 3 weeks and you're still looking for speakers. Now, I've seen a lot of different things, and I will say one of my pain points right now. I've been speaking for, at least 6 years. If I went back and did the math, it's probably longer. I've been on a TEDx stage. I've done live television, radio, etc. I've done a wide variety of different speaking engagements. In the last month, I've gotten 3 inquiries. Yay, all unpaid. And one from a relatively large nonprofit charitable organization, famous 4 letters, that should know better. And I was just like, how am I still at the stage where I'm being asked to speak for free? But this is a consistent thing that I'm seeing online, and it's mostly women. It's always women. And if it's not, and all women, racialized, queer, all of it. What is this epidemic? Or maybe it's not an epidemic. Has this always been the case? And it's just, we're louder about sharing our beefs online?
Yeah. Okay. I think that's what it is.
So it feels like an epidemic now, but I realize it probably wasn't.
I feel like you're right, though. I think it feels like an epidemic because people are willing to talk about it. And this is what I mean by the economy. Like nowadays, people will speak up because they feel that there's an injustice and they want to talk about it. And it's not easy, trust me, because like I have my own things I want to speak up about. But yeah, it's frustrating. I think there's different models to how people run events and secure their speakers. That one is like, oh my God, really ridiculous. Like, I'm sorry, but it's your job to market your event. It is not your speaker's job. Your speaker will help, but it's still your event. You are the one putting it on. So it's your job. So you shouldn't be saying like, oh, you must bring this many people or, you're going to have to pay. Like, it's just weird. Like, you should be paying those people to speak. Like, or at least if you're not paying them for some reason, even though I don't always agree with this, there's value given back as to ways that they can directly get work. And the reason I say that is because I do sponsor quite a bit. And sometimes I really hate it when people use the exposure angle because one, usually if you want somebody, it's because they're already exposed. I remember a post on that and that was really funny. I was like, ha, very true. 2, like exposure is overrated because you still need to do the work. It's not like you speak and somebody reaches out right away. Yes, that does happen, but that's not I had a speaker do a standing O at an event recently. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we got some immediate leads, But now it's nurturing the rest of those leads. And then when the right opportunity arises, because it's not always the right opportunity, right? So there's so much work that still needs to be done on the person's end that I think it is overrated, because you can't just say, oh, just come and then you will get, you got to work on it. So, but does it help? Sure, it helps to speak at these events, maybe for a lower fee, or maybe you decide you want to give back or whatever reason and you want to do it pro bono. Like, you can make that choice. But yeah, it's very frustrating. There's another group. Oh, I hate it. And I don't even mind mentioning it. I'm pretty sure it's called Star Alliance or Star something. And I'm sorry. No, maybe not Star something conferences. Yeah. Sorry, not Alliance. Whoever that is. Sorry.
Star Alliance is like the airline entity.
Yeah. It's not that. It's not that at all. I might add, but it's like Star conferences or something conferences. I could be wrong. But they reach out to people on LinkedIn all the time. I just had a speaker reach out to me, be like, do you know anything about this? And it's like, you have to pay $800 to speak at this event. And you'll get all these things, but it's like you have to pay to, like, it's weird. Like, you should be getting paid to speak. Yeah. Like, they're selling tickets. So where's that money going? Oh, well, it goes into operating the conference. They say, well, your speakers are one of the most critical parts of that event and the whole purpose and reason as to why you're having that event, networking and education. So you should expect to pay for the purpose of your event. So that's just like a whole other thing. But yeah, it's unfortunately, the other model is getting CEOs of companies to take up keynote spots. That's fine. Like, honestly, if that's what your event is built on, your choice. From an expert perspective, I think that you could still build in some professional speakers so that it's very good, because guaranteed that not all those sponsors or those companies are great speakers. It's not what they do for a living. So, I think there are ways to build in professionals to make it a compelling event. But if that's your model, that's your model. And if it works for your organization and the people you attract, then that's fine.
Right.
So there's different models, I think. Yes. But I think overall, if the purpose of your event is to engage your crowd, to educate them on something, and for them to actually make a difference in their lives and do something after, you need a professional, because they're the ones that know how to bring the whole package and how to actually get people to change their behavior. Because that's usually what you're doing. You're giving them something or helping them with a challenge they're facing, or you want them to change the way they do something or find new ways of doing things, right? So you need an expert for that. And so I think reserve the keynote spots for them. Get your sponsors to do little speeches here and there, but don't make them the main keynotes, because I think it just doesn't land, very well. And, it's a missed opportunity, I guess.
Yeah, we could definitely, as I said, have each of these segments could have been its own entire hour of talking, because I will say this. One, I've been on both sides. I've been the event planner who booked speakers, and I've been the booked speaker. So I come to it with a very different perspective. And I've had to be the person who does procure speakers who were unpaid. And they were opportunities that people decided they wanted to take because they wanted to launch their public speaking careers and whatever, and that is okay. And so I think, the whole exposure thing, I think I spoke about this in my last podcast episode, which was about my pet peeves, is it's like, I'm one of your costs. And if you're charging, if it is a ticketed event, and you don't have sponsors, you need to go back to the drawing board, because if you're like, oh, well, I can't afford to pay speakers because the costs only cover the food and the venue and the AV, well, then you don't have enough money to throw this event. You need to find some sponsors, you need to scale it back, or you need to cancel it all altogether. Asking other people to give up their labors, and especially when it's people asking women, asking Black people to speak for free during Black History Month, asking Indigenous people to speak for free during Indigenous History, like all these cultural months. If you spoke to Indigenous, Asian, queer, Black women, they're always asked to speak for free during the month in which they're not supposed to be. It's supposed to be
doing
their
that.
equity, and making things equitable, and paying people is the best way for equity. But there's that. So I think I think personally calling it out, and maybe not necessarily pinpointing that particular organization or event, depending on where you are in your speaker journey. But I think the talking about it is the key. I have a friend who, 4-time New York Times bestselling author, speaks for a living, etc. She was going to an event and found out that she was being paid less than the man or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And I have other friend, she runs a ghostwriting agency. She asks, and she's very transparent, and she'll ask other people. And if she's not getting paid the same, like, she will call it out. She'll go back to because why did you find $10K for the man and only found $5K for the woman? You're determining what her value is, and that's not the case. My value is my value based off of my lived experiences, my stage and speaking experiences, etc. So yeah, I think it is immensely frustrating, and I think people who plan events for a living understand this. I think they have to do the education to their client who might not believe that there's value in that. And people who are new, I want to gather my audience and I want to, you're not paying me an exposure. Exposure does not pay the rent. My son is 12 and he's been in men's shoes for 3 years. So that alone, I'm just if you're not covering his shoes, I'm not leaving my house. You want me to leave my house, put an outfit on, do my hair, maybe my makeup,
prep your speech. That's the biggest part, right?
The prep it's not like I didn't just go up there and freestyle. It might sound like that because of my style of speaking, but prep went into it, research went into it, all these things. So I think, it is immensely frustrating, and I'm glad that women speakers are speaking up about it a little bit more. Tami, I knew this was going to be excellent because you have been in the industry for such a long period of time and, have such a breadth of knowledge from various angles, from being at an agency to running your own. I'm a fan of you and how you move with intention, and, you're a cheerleader of people and such. So I appreciate getting to learn a little bit more about you. We've had conversations where we talk about me. And so this was a great opportunity to highlight you and what you're doing for women speakers, and in the industry. Really, really thankful for your time. And that's the end.
Exciting.
And that's a wrap for the episode. Thank you so much to Tami for her insight and her knowledge. And thank you to you for listening. If you liked it, send this to a friend who needs to hear it so I know it's real. Until next time, we'll keep the red carpet ready for you.